Welcome into our big day of breaking news here at campus2canton.com. It is early signing day, guys, and that means we here at Campus to Canton are going to help you keep track of everything that is going on today. All of the big names that are making their final school decisions, that are signing on that line, they are no longer just a verbal commit. They are locked into these schools. First, guys, go ahead, subscribe to the channel here, Campus to Canton. Set the notifications on so you know you get an update every single time we put one of these up online. We're going to try to do as many of them as we can here today, and then we will certainly have many more in the future. Today, I am here to talk to you about Kaden Saunders, wide receiver, signing with Penn State today. Penn State has a huge recruiting class. Top players at every position. Kaden Saunders, certainly no exception. 5'10", 172 pounds. Played his high school football at Westerville South High School, which is located in Ohio. And obviously here signing with Penn State. His rankings as of now, guys, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, he is wide receiver 6 overall. 24/7 has him as their wide receiver 13, ESPN wide receiver 4, on 3, wide receiver 34, and Rivals wide receiver 11. We here at Campus to Canton have him right now as our consensus wide receiver 6. So we are right in line with the composite and a little higher than a lot of the recruiting services, but certainly nothing egregious there. I think we kind of fall in line with the consensus there at this point. Just a little bit about Kaden Saunders as a player, guys, because that's what we all care about. He is a very explosive athlete. At 5'10", 172, obviously he kind of has to be, at least at this stage, in order to get that lofty of recruiting status at that size. He's not one of those giant athletic freaks, but he is a very, very good athlete for 5'10", 172. He's an Under Armour All-American, so I mean that kind of tells you as well what kind of an athlete he is, and he does have a verified 11.34 100-meter dash. That was as a junior. Figure, again, a little faster than that here now, and certainly will be something for him to work on moving forward. Penn State definitely has that reputation to kind of max these guys out as athletes, so that is a good thing for him. I think when you sit down to kind of watch him, he's going to hold special teams value. I think that's very important for some of these receivers nowadays, especially the slightly undersized ones. They have to be able to contribute in more than one way. And I think that will get him on the field faster there at Penn State. That is going to be his route to early playing time. And if he impresses there, certainly then should probably translate to chances at wide receiver. He's a very good punt and kick returner. He can do both of them. So again, I think that he contributes in that way in a pretty decent role as a freshman with upside, again, to do more as a receiver. Following that kind of experience. He's kind of a vertical receiver at this point, actually. 24/7 comps him to Tyler Lockett, and I don't think that's completely inaccurate, actually. I don't always agree with some of their comparisons, and comps are hard anyway, especially for high school kids. But that kind of is the player he is now. He's going to win deep. He's started to learn how to kind of stack and shed defenders. I think that's a skill that he'll continue to work on, and with his skill set will continue to improve on. He's learning other nuances of route running as well. Obviously you never expect these kids to be top end route runners coming out of high school. He has a lot of things to work on, but he's kind of showing, variation in route stems, staying low in the hips, in and out of breaks, all of these kinds of things he is starting to pick up. And I think that's a really good sign for him. He's very smooth as an athlete. He's not sudden. I think, you talk about smooth athletes, talk about sudden athletes. He's a bit on the smoother side, glides a little bit as he runs. That's my personal preference generally for athletes, especially at the wide receiver position. So I really, really like him stylistically. And I think he has decent ball skills. He's never going to be a guy that you're going up, contested catch, red zone target, any of those kinds of things. But I think he does well at the catch point. And I think you still need that. If you're a smaller guy working in the slot, for instance, run a little slant, defender hits you right as the ball gets there. That's ball skills, guys. And I think that he does that well, and that will he'll be able to do that in college as well. Some things for him to work on right now. He's only really played the slot in high school, which I think is actually really interesting. some of these undersized guys, when they get there, they still were their boundary receiver in high school because obviously they're probably the best athlete there, probably the best receiver there. He's been in the slot, so I'm curious if he can play outside a little bit. I think he certainly is a pretty good athlete there, but if he's not doing it in high school, I am a little concerned that he does not do that in college. And then obviously, if he doesn't do it in college, probably not going to do it in the pros either. So that's going to be something to watch there. If he's limited to the slot and that's as that smaller size, do we like him as much? He's not necessarily an Elijah Moore, where we thought that he probably could play on the boundary, and so far it looks like he has. An AB, guys like that that kind of showed that inside-outside game. We have not seen that yet with him, so that's going to be something to monitor there at Penn State. He can improve his stop-start ability a little bit. That first step's a little slow. That's probably why his 100-meter is a little slower compared to what you would think just based on watching him on a football field. Now, certainly he can just be a guy that's a faster football player than track athlete, and there are plenty of those guys. But I think that initial stop-start ability and improving that and the burst, if those can come along, that will certainly suit him well. And really, he doesn't play with any physicality at this point. And again, he's only 5'10", 172. I don't need him out there bullying guys, but he's really all finesse at this point. There's not much physicality with the ball in his hands. He can juke you a little bit, but he's not going to run through anybody. These are kinds of things I think we want to see him improve on over the next 3 or 4 years, but they're certainly not game or deal breakers. Like we said, he's the wide receiver 6 for us here at Campus to Canton. I have him as my wide receiver 8 right now. So the pros certainly outweigh the cons, even though there are a couple there to at least be aware of. In terms of his situation at Penn State, as far as their wide receivers go, they lose Jahan Dotson and Cam Sullivan-Brown, 2 guys that contributed there in 2021. Between those 2, they lose about 37% of their receiving yards within the wide receiver group, 34% of the wide receivers receptions, and then 55% of their receivers total touchdowns last year. Most of that, again, is Jahan Dotson, but there is a very big void there, at least losing a third and 2/2 of their receiving yard receptions and touchdowns. Guys that can step into that role, they do have a few there. They have Parker Washington, a guy that we like, a guy that's been mostly a slot guy, likely to reprise that role again next year, probably their leading receiver. And then they've got a couple other guys there at Penn State as well. So, whether they Keandre Lambert is going to be the other big name there. There's no rumor about them picking up any transfers at the moment. So is there a third or fourth or fifth kind of wide receiver on the depth chart spot there for Kaden Saunders next year? I think there is. That's going to depend a lot on just how he develops, how he shows up there in spring season and plays well. They do bring in a couple of other 3-ish star wide receivers this year. I don't think I'd put any of them close to the category that Kaden Saunders is in, but it is a bigger class as it relates to the wide receivers. So just all things to watch for there with Kaden Saunders. I think if I'm doing a freshman or supplemental draft right now and it's a shallower returning pool, I could see him going in the top 36 to 48 picks. So a third or fourth round pick probably for you. In startups, I think he'll be a top 10 or so round guy. I personally probably wouldn't take him until later than that. But I think if you want him this offseason, that's where you're going to have to take him because he is becoming a little bit of a Debbie Darling. Some of the big name guys out there are hyping this kid up, and we are as well. Wide receiver 6 is nothing to sneeze at there. So if you want Kaden Saunders, guys, you're going to have to spend some decent draft capital, nothing outrageous. That Penn State offense probably won't be super high powered this year, but they've got a lot of these recruits coming in this year. Give it a year or two. That could be an offense that you really want a piece of. Kaden Saunders has the potential to be a big piece there. Putting those things together, I think he is definitely a desirable option this offseason, and I would be looking to acquire him across my drafts here in 2022.